Hello and welcome to this lecture on women's protection laws in India, part 2. This lecture focuses on four major laws and one landmark judicial case that forms the core of India's legal framework for protecting women and children from violence, exploitation, harassment, and discriminatory marital practices. The topics covered include the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offense POCSO Act 2012 and 2030, popularly known as Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment at Workplace, the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019, and the Mathura tribal rape case of 1979, the most important case that triggered major reforms in a rape law and leading to a series of amendments in women related laws. These laws were enacted at different historical moments, responding to specific social challenges such as early marriage, child sexual abuse, workplace harassment, and sudden unilateral divorce through instant triple talaq. Each of these issues directly impacts women's dignity, equality, and bodily autonomy. The laws in this part are more recent compared to those in part 1, except for the rape law, reflecting modern concerns and evolving understanding of gender justice. They highlight the growing emphasis on children's rights, workplace safety, swift legal processes, and accountability of offender. The inclusion of the Mathura case underscores how judicial decisions and public pressure can reshape legal definitions and uh, enforcement standards. Together, these topics demonstrate India's commitment to strengthening its legal system to ensure safer environments for women and children. Why I'm referring to children? Because it is the girl child who is more vulnerable, though male child are also, but that is why I have taken few aspects of that. The following slides examine the background, key provisions, procedures, and social significance of each law, illustrating their role in addressing gender based violence and promoting human rights. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, PCMA, was introduced to strengthen earlier laws that had failed to eliminate child marriage, a harmful practice affecting millions of children in India. The earlier Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929 mainly imposed minor fines and did not effectively prevent marriages from taking place. Child marriage continued due to entrenched social norms, gender inequality, poverty, and concerns about family honor. The health consequences of early marriage, including malnutrition, maternal mortality, and limited education, were widely documented by organizations such as UNICEF and the National Family Health Survey, that is NFHS. These findings, along with the global commitments under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, pushed India to enact stronger legislations. The 2006 Act defined a child as a male below 21 years and a female below 18 years. Unlike the earlier law, the new Act goes beyond punishment and introduces mechanisms to prevent, prohibit, and protect. It gives legal status to child marriages as voidable at the option of the child, acknowledges the legitimacy of children born from such marriages, and ensures maintenance and custody arrangements. The Act also provides the power to declare certain forced or trafficking based child marriages void ab initio. The appointment of child marriage prohibition officers reflects an administrative commitment to enforcement. Despite the law, child marriage persists in some regions due to cultural pressure and economic hardships. This background shows why the 2006 Act is a critical legal tool for safeguarding children's rights and promoting gender equality. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006 contains several important provisions aimed at preventing and addressing child marriages. Because girls are a bigger sufferer in child marriages, that is why I have taken up this particular act. One of its central features is the concept of avoidable marriage. Any child married before reaching the legal age may petition the court to annul the marriage within 2 years of turning 18 for girls or 21 for boys. In cases involving trafficking, kidnapping, coercion, or deceit, the marriage can be declared void from the beginning. The Act criminalizes the direct or indirect promotions, solemnization, or participation in child marriage. This includes parents, relatives, priests, community leaders, and anyone who facilitates the marriage. Penalties include imprisonment of up to 2 years and fines up to 1 lakh rupees. Section 6 requires the appointment of child marriage prohibition officers, CMPOs, with the powers to prevent marriages, collect evidence, counsel families, coordinate with police, and file complaints. Courts can issue injunctions to stop impending child marriages. To protect girls, the Act allows for maintenance and residence orders for the female contracting party even after annulment. Children born from child marriages are deemed legitimate and entitled to their legal rights, including inheritance. The Act promotes rehabilitation of victims by directing authorities to provide safe shelter, education, and support services. Although the Act is strong on paper, implementation challenges remain due to lack of awareness, fear of social backlash, and pressure from community elders, the deep patriarchal structures. Nonetheless, the provisions create a comprehensive framework for prevention and accountability. The significance of the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act lies in its recognition of child marriage as a serious human rights violation rather than a cultural tradition. Child marriage disproportionately affects girls, limiting their education, employment opportunities, and autonomy. Early marriage is strongly associated with early pregnancy, high maternal mortality, longer fertility periods, malnutrition among young mothers and infants. By establishing clear legal consequences and introducing preventive mechanisms, the Act aims to break cycles of poverty and gender inequality. One of its strongest feature is the protection of married girls through maintenance, custody, and residence rights, even if the marriage is annulled. This prevents victims from being left without resources. The legitimacy of children born from such marriages ensures that they are not penalized for circumstances beyond their control. The Act aligns India's domestic laws with international obligations under conventions such as CEDAW and the CRC. Socially, the Act has contributed to increased awareness of the harms of child marriage, supported by government campaigns like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and NGO initiatives. Enforcement remains uneven, especially in rural and marginalized communities, but progress has been made in reducing child marriage rates over 2 decades, as shown by NFHS data. The Act's significance also lies in empowering authorities to intervene proactively rather than waiting for complaints. Despite challenges, the law is a critical step towards ensuring children's rights to education, safety, and healthy development. The Protection of Children from Sexual Offences (POCSO) Act 2012 was enacted to fill major gaps in India's legal system regarding child sexual abuse. Prior to POCSO, the Indian Penal Code did not clearly define several forms of sexual offences against children. Non penetrative assault, harassment, and pornography related offences were not sufficiently covered, and the legal framework was fragmented and outdated. Rising cases of sexual violence reported in the National Crime Records Bureau (NCRB) and studies by child rights organization highlighted the urgent need for a special law. In response to international commitments such as UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and increasing public concern, Parliament enacted POCSO as a gender neutral, child focused statute. The Act defines a child as anyone below 18 years and recognizes a wide range of offenses, including penetrative assault, aggravated assault, sexual harassment, and exploitation for pornography. POCSO mandates the establishment of special courts to conduct speedy trials and requires child friendly procedures during investigation and trial. It imposes strict punishments, including imprisonment for life in egregious cases. Mandatory reporting provisions place legal responsibility on teachers, doctors, and other professionals to report suspected abuse. Failure to report is itself an offense. The Act prohibits media from revealing the identity of child victims. POCSO's background reflects a growing recognition that children require special safeguards due to their vulnerability, and the traditional criminal law approaches were inadequate. The Act represents a crucial shift towards comprehensive protection and accountability in cases of child sexual abuse. The major provisions of this act. The POCSO Act includes several detailed provisions that define, criminalize and regulate different forms of sexual offences against children. These provisions are divided into categories for clarity. Penetrative sexual assault involves penetration of the vagina, mouth, urethra, or anus of a child. Aggravated penetrative sexual assault includes offenses committed by persons in positions of authority, such as police officers, teachers, relatives, or those causing grievous hurt, pregnancy, or repeated assault. Sexual assault refers to physical contact without penetration but with sexual intent. Aggravated sexual assault involves abuse by persons in trust or authority. Sexual harassment includes inappropriate gestures, words, um, or actions with a sexual intent. POCSO also criminalizes the use of children for pornography as well as possessing, distributing, or storing child pornographic material. Punishments vary by severity but include rigorous imprisonment. The Act mandates mandatory reporting, requiring all individuals, especially teachers, doctors, and caregivers, to report suspected offences to the police or face penalties. Failure to report is punishable. The Act mandates special courts to ensure speedy trials and child friendly procedures. Section 33 requires that trials be completed within 1 year. The Act prohibits media from disclosing a child's identity. Unlike earlier IPC provisions, POCSO is gender neutral, protecting both boys and girls. It also allows compensation for rehabilitation costs. These provisions form a comprehensive legal framework to prevent child sexual abuse and ensure accountability. One of the most important features of the POCSO Act is its emphasis on child friendly procedures designed to reduce trauma during investigation and trial. The Act mandates that a child's statements be recorded in a comfortable, non intimidating environment, ideally at home or another familiar place. Police officers recording statements must not wear uniforms and must adopt a sensitive approach. A trusted adult can be present during the child's interaction with authorities. The child cannot be detained overnight or subjected to repeated questioning. Medical examinations must be conducted by female doctors whenever possible and only with the consent of the child's guardian. During during court proceedings, the child must not be exposed to the accused. Video conferencing screens or separate rooms may be used. During court proceedings, the child must not be exposed to the accused. Video conferencing screens or separate rooms may be used. Special courts must ensure that trials are conducted as quickly as possible, ideally concluding within 1 year. The Act prohibits aggressive questioning of children and directs judges to adopt a friendly tone. Children's identities must remain confidential to protect them from stigma or retaliation. The Act also permits compensation for psychological trauma, rehabilitation, or medical treatment. These procedures recognize that traditional criminal trials can be stressful and uh, re traumatizing for children. By prioritizing sensitivity, the Act aims to encourage reporting, reduce fear, and ensure that children can participate in the justice process without additional harm. However, challenges remain in ensuring adequate training for police and judicial officers. Despite these issues, POCSO's child friendly procedures represent a major advancement in protecting vulnerable children. POCSO Act underwent major amendments in 2019 to address rising concerns about the severity of child sexual offenses and the growing issue of child pornography. The amendment introduced the death penalty for aggravated penetrative sexual assault in the most extreme cases. It also increased minimum punishment for several offenses to create stronger deterrence. The amendment strengthened provisions related to child pornography by criminalizing not just the creation but also browsing, downloading, storing, and transmitting pornographic content involving children. These changes reflect the increasing digital exposure of children and the need for legal tools to address online exploitation. The significance of POCSO lies in its comprehensive framework, which covers prevention, reporting, investigation, trial, and rehabilitation. It is one of India's most child focused laws, recognizing children's vulnerability and the need for special protections. The Act also plays an important role in raising awareness and improving institutional responses. Schools, hospitals, childcare institutions, and NGOs now have clear responsibilities under the mandatory reporting clauses. Despite its strength, challenges remain: delays in trial, shortage of trained child psychologists, inadequate special courts, and a lack of awareness in rural areas hinder effective implementation. Nonetheless, POCSO has transformed India's mm, approach to child sexual abuse by emphasizing sensitivity, accountability, and children's rights. It aligns national law with international standards, encourages reporting, and ensures that offenders face strong legal consequences. Overall, POCSO is a cornerstone of child protection in India. Next, very important act is POSH Act, that is Protection, Prevention, Prohibition, that deals with the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act 2013, commonly known as the POSH Act, was enacted to address workplace sexual harassment, which had long been underreported and inadequately addressed. The Act's foundation lies in the Vishakha Guidelines issued by the Supreme Court in 1997 in response to the gang rape of Bhavri Devi, a social worker from Rajasthan who tried to stop a child marriage. In retaliation to that, she was gang raped The Vishaka judgment recognized workplace harassment as a violation of Article 14, 15, and 21 of the Constitution, requiring employers to provide safe working environments. However, because these guidelines were judicial directions, they lacked statutory enforcement mechanisms. With growing female workforce participation in various sectors, including offices, factories, schools, hospitals, domestic work, and informal employment, sexual harassment became an increasingly visible issue. Women's movements, international conventions such as CEDAW, and media reports highlighted the need for a comprehensive law. The POSH Act defines sexual harassment broadly, covering unwelcome physical, verbal, non-verbal, or visual behaviors. It expands the definition of workplace to include government offices, private companies, educational institutions, sports facilities, transport services, and even homes employing domestic workers. The Act mandates internal grievance redressal systems and requires employers to create awareness. Its background highlights the intersection of legal activism, social movements, and evolving gender roles, making it a crucial development in India's pursuit of gender equality and workplace safety. Posh marked the transition from voluntary guidelines to a binding legal framework protecting women at workplace. The Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act lays out clear definitions and procedures to address workplace sexual harassment. It defines sexual harassment to include unwelcome physical contacts, demanding demands for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks showing pornography, and any unwanted behavior creating a hostile work environment. The Act applies to all women, regardless of whether they are permanent employees, interns, trainees, contractual workers, or domestic workers. A key feature is the requirement for every workplace with 10 or more employees to form an internal committee, IC, headed by a senior woman employee with at least half of the members being women. An external member from an NGO or women's organization ensures impartiality. For workplace with fewer than 10 employees or for domestic workers, complaints are handled by local committees at the district level. Complaints must normally be filed within 3 months, although extensions may be granted. The IC must mm, conduct inquiries promptly, giving both parties an opportunity to present evidence. Interim relief may include transfer, leave for the complainant, or restrictions on the respondent. Recommendations may include written apology, warnings, wage deductions, or termination. Employers are legally obligated to provide safe workplaces, display information about the Act, conduct awareness programs, and support inquiries. Failure to comply can result in penalties and cancellation of business licenses. The Act also protects complainants from victimization and prohibits retaliation. By establishing clear procedures and accountability mechanisms, the POSH Act creates a structured approach to addressing workplace harassment. The significance of the POSH Act lies in its recognition of workplace sexual harassment as a form of discrimination and a violation of constitutional rights. Before the Act, harassment was often dismissed as personal behavior rather than a workplace issue. The Act not only provides a legal definition but also emphasizes the employer's responsibility to prevent and redress harassment. This shifts the focus from individual complaints to organizational accountability. By mandating internal committees with external members, the Act ensures that complaints are handled with neutrality and sensitivity. Its broad definition of a workplace protects women in diverse work environments, including domestic workers who were previously overlooked. The Act encourages more women to participate in the workforce by ensuring safer conditions. Although challenges remain in terms of awareness, implementation, and bias in inquiries, the Act has strengthened reporting mechanisms and encouraged organizations to train employees on gender sensitivity. The Act also plays a role in gender mainstreaming by requiring employers to take proactive measures to maintain respectful workplaces. Awareness programs, clear HR policies, and safe reporting channels are now integral to workplace compliance. Despite limitations such as underreporting due to fear of retaliation, stigma, the POSH Act remains a transformative law. It brings India closer to global standards and supports women in asserting their rights to dignity, safety, and equality at work. The Muslim Women Act 2019 addresses the long debated practice of instant triple talaq, also known as talaq-e-bidat. In this practice, a Muslim husband could unilaterally dissolve a marriage by pronouncing talaq three times in a single sitting, verbally or through electronic means such as SMS or email. This practice often left women abandoned without financial support or due process. Women's groups and human rights advocates highlighted the severe hardships caused by instant triple talaq. In 2017, the Supreme Court in Shahrabanu versus Union of India declared the practice unconstitutional and arbitrary. Following this judgment, Parliament enacted the 2019 Act to give statutory effect to the ruling and ensure legal deterrence. The background of the Act lies in balancing religious practices with the constitutional values of equality and dignity. Although some argued that criminalizing triple talaq could harm families, supporters insisted it was necessary to protect women from sudden and unilateral divorce. The act emerged from years of legal activism, petitions from affected women, and judicial scrutiny. It also reflects India's efforts to reform discriminatory personal law practices and provide stronger protections to Muslim women. By placing safeguards and clear procedures, the Act addresses a long standing gap in Muslim family law and strengthens the rights of married women. The Muslim Women Act 2019 contains several provisions aimed at safeguarding Muslim women from arbitrary marital dissolution. Section 3 declares the pronouncement of instant triple talaq, whether spoken, written, or electronic, void and illegal. Section 4 makes the act of pronouncing instant triple talaq a cognizable offense, punishable with up to 3 years imprisonment and a fine. Crucially, the Act includes procedural safeguards. Police can take actions only upon a complaint filed by the aggrieved wife or her blood relatives, preventing misuse by third parties. The offense is compoundable, meaning the woman can choose reconciliation if she wishes, subject to a magistrate's approval. Bail can be granted only after hearing the woman, ensuring her safety and concerns are considered. Section 5 entitles the woman to receive subsistence allowance for herself and her dependent children, determined by the magistrate. Section 6 provides for custody of minor children, which may be granted to the wife, ensuring stability for the children. The Act does not affect the validity of other forms of talaq permitted under Islamic law, such as talaq-e-Hasan or talaq-e-Hasan, which follow due process. The Act aims to deter arbitrary divorce, promote gender justice, and strengthen the legal rights of Muslim women. It provides financial support and legal remedies, ensuring that the practice of instant triple talaq cannot undermine women's dignity or economic security. The significance lies in its role as a major legal reform that enhances the rights and protection of Muslim women in India. By declaring instant triple talaq void and legal, the act prevents husbands from ending marriages arbitrarily without due process. This strengthens women's constitutional rights under Article 15, 14, 15, and 21. The Act also provides economic protection by ensuring subsistence allowance, which is essential for women who relied financially on their husbands. It protects children through custody provisions, ensuring continuity and well being. By making the offense cognizable but with safeguards, the Act attempts to balance deterrence with fairness. From a broader perspective, the Act represents a significant step towards gender just personal laws. It signals that religious practices cannot override constitutional rights or allow discrimination. The act also reflects the influence of women's voices as Muslim women themselves petition courts and parliament for protection. Critics argue that criminalizing marital disputes may not always be the best remedy, but supporters maintain that the act prevents sudden abandonment and ensures accountability. Internationally, the Act aligns India with reforms in many Muslim majority countries that have banned instant triple talaq, such as Egypt, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Overall, the Act is crucial legal measure that strengthens marital security, promotes gender equality, and recognizes Muslim women as rights bearing individuals entitled to dignity and justice. Mathura tribal rape case, formerly Tukaram versus State of Maharashtra 1979, is one of the most influential cases in India's legal history. Mathura, a 16-year-old Adivasi girl, was raped by two police officers inside the Desai Ganj police station. The trial court acquitted the accused. The High Court convicted them, but the Supreme Court ultimately acquitted the policeman, claiming Mathura had consented because there was no visible signs of physical struggle. Also, that Mathura eloped with her boyfriend, and therefore she's a girl of loose character, and therefore she can be raped, was something shocking and uh, extremely difficult to be accepted in this modern period. The court suggested that absence of resistance implied consent, ignoring the power, imbalance, fear, and coercion inherent in custodial environment. The judgment sparked nationwide outrage. Prominent legal scholars and women's groups wrote open letters condemning their decision, making the beginning of India's modern feminist legal movement. The case highlighted systemic failures, police misconduct, judicial insensitivity, flawed interpretation of consent, and lack of protection for vulnerable women. Public pressure and sustained protest forced Parliament to amend rape laws in 1983. Key changes included shifting the burden of proof in custodial rape, expanding the definition of rape, imposing stricter punishments, introducing in camera trials, prohibiting disclosure of the victim's identity, and recognizing that consent requires voluntary and informed participation. The Mathura case is significant because it exposed deep rooted biases in the justice system and demonstrated the power of public activism in shaping legal reforms. It remains a landmark example of how a single case can transform national law. The Mathura case profoundly shaped India's legal response to sexual violence. Its most important impact was the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1983, which brought sweeping changes to rape laws. The amendment expanded the definition of rape and introduced new categories such as custodial rape, police station rape, hospital rape, and custodial abuse by those in authority. The burden of proof shifted partially. If a woman alleged lack of consent, courts were required to presume absence of consent in custodial settings unless the accused proved otherwise. The amendment mandated in camera trials, protecting victims' privacy and dignity. The law also prohibited media from revealing the identity of rape victims, recognizing the stigma attached to sexual violence. The Mathura case also influenced later reforms, including the 2013 Criminal Law Amendment after the Nirbhaya case, which further expanded definitions and increased penalties. Socially, the case galvanized India's women's movement, leading to sustained activism, legal literacy efforts, and demands for police accountability. It exposed how uh, courts often misunderstood consent, victims' behavior, and power dynamics. The case is significant not only for legal reforms but for shifting public discourse. It demonstrated that judicial decisions could perpetuate injustice if they fail to consider social realities. The case continues to be taught in law schools as an example of systemic bias and the need for gender sensitive adjudication. It remains a turning point in India's fight against sexual violence and a symbol of how collective action can transform laws. To conclude, the significance of the laws and case discussed in this part, the Child Marriage Act, POXO Act, POSH Act, Muslim Women Marriage Act, and the Mathura case. Together, these frameworks demonstrate India's evolving approach to gender justice, child protection, and women's rights in modern settings. These laws address harms occurring across different spaces: homes, schools, workplace, and of course, digital environments, and recognize women and children as rights bearing individuals deserving of safety, equality, and dignity. The Child Marriage Act seeks to break cycles of poverty and protect young girls from harmful early marriages. The POXO Act creates a strong protective environment for children, ensuring sensitive procedures and strict penalties. The POSH Act holds employers accountable for workplace safety and ensure redressal mechanisms. The 2019 Muslim Women Act protects women from sudden abandonment and ensures financial and custodial rights. The Mathura case highlights how judicial attitudes can shape legal reforms and how activism can transform the law. Despite these achievements, challenges remain: underreporting, social norms, institutional bias, deep rooted patriarchal structure, inconsistent implementation often limit the effectiveness of these laws. Continued training, awareness campaigns, and social support systems are crucial. Collectively, the laws in this part represent India's commitment to strengthening legal protections and building a society that upholds the dignity and rights of women and children. Thank you.